Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. Wow, that is one of the most powerful and famous lines in all of political philosophy. But what did the guy who wrote it, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, actually mean? I mean, how can you be born free but live your whole life in chains? And why on earth does this paradox from the 1700s still feel so incredibly relevant today?
Well, that's what we're going to get into. We're going to explore the revolutionary, then, let's be honest, deeply contradictory ideas of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, he was a major figure during the Enlightenment, an era that was all about progress, reason, and science. But Rousseau, he was the guy who dared to stand up and ask a really radical question. What if all this progress isn't making us better? What if it's actually a curse?
So how did Rousseau even get to such a startling conclusion? Well, the story goes that it all started with a lightning bolt moment in 1749. He was walking to visit his friend in prison, and he spots an ad for an essay contest. The question was, have the arts and sciences actually improved our morals? His answer would go on to shake the very foundations of European thought.
He basically argued, no, absolutely not. In what became his first discourse, Rousseau made the shocking claim that so-called civilization doesn't make us better people. It actually makes us weaker, more obsessed with what other people think, and just fake. He said that as our arts and sciences got more sophisticated, our souls got more corrupted. You can imagine, this was a direct shot at the optimism of his time, and it made him a superstar overnight.
Okay, so to explain how we ended up in this mess, Rousseau had to do a bit of a thought experiment. He asked, what were we like before all this, before society, before we put on these chains? He called this hypothetical pre-social condition the state of nature.
Now this is really important. Rousseau's idea of early man, sometimes called the noble savage, isn't some violent brute, not at all. This natural human is independent, yeah, but also peaceful. They're driven by just two basic instincts, a simple drive for self-preservation, which he called amour de soi, and a natural feeling of compassion for others, or PTA. So in this original state, we're free, we're equal, and we're actually pretty decent.
So if we started out so good, where did it all go wrong? How did we get from that natural freedom to a world of chains? For Rousseau, the whole catastrophe started with a single terrible idea, private property. The moment the first person fenced off a piece of land and said, "This is mine," that was it. That, he argued, was the birth of inequality, the beginning of rich versus poor, powerful versus weak. That was the moment the first links of the chain were forged.
And this explains the huge psychological shift that happened. That healthy, natural self-love, amour de soi, got replaced by this new, toxic kind of vanity he called amour propre. This isn't just about survival anymore. This is the burning need to be seen as better than other people. Seriously, think of it as the engine behind social media, that constant comparison, the craving for likes, the fear of what others think. That's amour propre. It's the source of our envy and our pride, the psychological chains that keep us trapped.
So, after laying out this pretty bleak diagnosis, Rousseau didn't just say, well, I guess we should all go live in the woods again. No. In his most famous political book, The Social Contract, he tried to figure out a radical solution for how we could all live together in society and somehow get our freedom back.
The absolute heart of his solution is this big idea, the general will. Now, this can be tricky. It's not just the sum of what every individual wants for themselves. That's what he called the will of all. Instead, the general will is what we, the people, decide is best for the entire community when we're thinking as citizens, not just as selfish individuals. It always aims for the common good.
So here's the deal. Here's the social contract he proposes. We all agree to give up our natural freedom, the freedom to do whatever you want, whenever you want, and we hand that over to the community. But in return, we get something much more valuable, civil freedom. That's the freedom and security that comes from living under laws that we ourselves have a hand in creating. We are in charge. We become both the rulers and the ruled.
Now we come to his most infamous and, let's face it, controversial phrase, forced to be free. It sounds pretty terrifying, right? But for Rousseau, it meant something very specific. If your own selfish desires, your amour propre, make you want to break a law that we all agreed on for the common good, the community can step in and compel you to follow it. In doing that, they're forcing you to live up to your own higher, rational self. They're freeing you from your own worst impulses.
So that's the big political solution, but Rousseau was also thinking about the individual. I mean, if society is this corrupting machine, how in the world do you raise a single child to be a good, free person inside of it? His answer was in another game-changing book called Emile.
Rousseau laid out this whole plan for an education that follows the natural stages of a child's development. So when our student, Emile, is a little kid, he doesn't read books, he learns by getting his hands dirty in nature. Rousseau called this negative education. The goal isn't to pump a kid full of facts, but to protect their natural goodness from all the corruption and nonsense of society. It's only when he gets older that he learns a trade, and then finally studies morality and reason.
So the core principle here is just revolutionary for its time. Education should be all about the child. Instead of treating them like an empty bucket you pour knowledge into, the teacher's job is to nurture their natural curiosity and let them learn by doing. You can draw a straight line from this single idea to so many modern educational movements, from Montessori to John Dewey.
Rousseau died in 1778, just a decade before the French Revolution would erupt. He didn't get to see it, but his ideas were about to set the world on fire. And his legacy? Well, it's just as massive and complicated as the man himself, and people are still fiercely debating it today.
I mean, just look at this. His ideas about the people being in charge helped fuel the French Revolution. His love of nature and emotion basically kicked off the entire Romantic movement in art and literature. We already talked about his impact on schools. And his philosophy was so powerful, it famously woke up another giant, Immanuel Kant, from his dogmatic slumber. His influence was just enormous.
But here's the great and deeply uncomfortable paradox of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The man who wrote the book on how to perfectly raise a child abandoned all 5 of his own children to an orphanage where their chances of survival were grim. It's a shocking contradiction that complicates everything he ever wrote about morality and goodness.
And that brings us to how people see him today. It's really all over the map. For some, he's a hero, a true champion of democracy. For others, that whole forced to be free thing is a terrifying blueprint for totalitarian governments. And then there's this third view, which sees him as the father of romanticism, the guy who taught us to value feelings and the beauty of the natural world. He contains all of it.
In the end, Rousseau doesn't leave us with any easy answers. What he does leave us with, though, is a profound and timeless question. His entire life's work really boils down to this one fundamental challenge. How do we do it? How do we navigate this complex world with all of its demands, laws, and social pressures while still holding on to that authentic, real freedom that we're all born with? That was Rousseau's question, and it's still very much our question today.